if he's gonna make the cut.
Nice. Are you guys probably not musical theater fans at all?
Oh, I
Because
am huge.
I'm
Yeah.
getting ready to go see the Mo Wicked movie.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Super excited about that.
Speaking of, well, not musical theater, but speaking of that genre, I saw that Lady Gaga was going to be joining the staff of Wednesday in season two. I don't know if you watched that.
I don't, but I like Gaga a
Wednesday
lot.
is a wonderful series.
Well,
What what streaming
my
service is that on?
It's on Netflix.
my big music news is my wife took me to see Taylor Swift in Indianapolis.
Nice. How was it?
Wow.
Was it
Oh, it was
crazy?
great. She
Good.
is really quite a performer. Uh,
Yeah,
You know, if you had given me 100 guesses as to what you did last weekend, John, that would have been
that would
about
not be it.
104.
Yeah.
me too.
So
Uh,
you can call yourself a Swiftie now
You
and
are a
make us all.
Swiftie.
I
Yeah,
think I'm officially a Swiftie, yeah.
I love it.
My
Well, you
daughters
know,
are my daughters are going to Vegas to see Adele.
Oh,
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 wow.
I'd love
nice.
to see Adele. I think that would be a great show.
Is she going to be in the Sphere? Is that where she is in Vegas?
Yeah, she is finishing her Vegas tour or something. This is the last few concerts she's doing. At the end of the year, she's out of Vegas.
Hmm.
I went to Vegas last summer and saw Kelly Clarkson at her
Oh,
when she was doing her residency there at the Hard Rock, or not the Hard Rock, the Planet Hollywood.
that's pretty cool.
And you know how, well, maybe you don't, but when you're gambling in Vegas, your drinks are free or cheap. Uh, at the concert, they were not.
Oh yeah.
I bought two drinks and it was $37. I
Whew,
was like, these
Well,
better, I better feel these like immediately.
right.
I
This is
got I
all I'm
got
gonna have.
I got married in Vegas, so I got lots of stories. But that's for another time.
John, if you really want to make me like your biggest fan, tell me that it was by an Elvis impersonator.
I will tell you, I requested that and my wife vetoed it.
And you still married her? John.
I did. Yeah, what?
Different one today, guys.
All right, everybody should mute now. I guess we're getting
Did you
started.
know that the feeling of awe can not only change the way you see the world, but it can actually improve your health? Dr. Keltner, professor of psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, one of the world's foremost awe researchers, tells us what he's learned while examining the effects on our minds, bodies, and outlooks. According to Dr. Keltner, moral beauty and nature appear to be two of the most powerful of the wonders of awe. Taking in the kindness and courage and strength and the overcoming that people are capable of shocks people, knocks people out, and it's everywhere. As Rotarians, we see it in our work. The Miracle League, Surgery on Sunday, Christmas program with Booker T, Washington Kids. Those are just a few examples. And then nature. Nature does it. It's so profound. For me, it's standing on a beach looking at the ocean. Experiencing awe activates the vagus nerve, a big bundle of nerves starting at the top of your spinal cord that helps us look at people and vocalize. It's activated, which slows our heart rate, helps with digestion, opens up our bodies to things bigger than us. He also discovered that experiencing awe lowered inflammation, helped alleviate anxiety and pain, and triggers the release of oxytocin, the love hormone that promotes trust and understanding. So if we want more awe in our lives and all the health benefits, what should we do? Give yourself a few minutes every day or every other day. Slow down, put away our devices, breathe deeply, and open your mind to something larger than yourself. You know, like Kentucky beating Duke.
Thank you for that awe-inspiring inspiration, Phil. Here for the introduction of guests, Rod Hartzler.
Good afternoon. We had two guests today. Michelle Berger, a guest at Laurel Martin. Where are you at, Michelle? There you go, stand, okay. And David Blondell, the guest of his father. We're glad to see you both today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you, guests. Thank you, Zoom folks, for coming in. Reminder to silence your phones. I heard a few last week. Eric, are you in the house? Yeah. He's gonna get you this time. Celebrating lottery. Kevin Weaver, come on down. All right, I'm gonna pull both numbers out. First one is 4694. 4694. And then the other one is the dummy one. 4694. Going once. Hey, 4676. 4676. Pick a winner. What are we going for? The Jack of Hearts, and how much? Oh, close, but no cigar. Do we get the other one? 4676. Yay, but let's go.
Show me the money.
Show me the money.
All right. What card you done?
Here we go. Oh, close but no cigar. Thank you for playing.
All right.
Celebrating birthdays this month. Will Goldie, George Brooks, Jeff Nazarko, Mary Ellen Fithless, Judy Worth, Jim Host, John Tackett, Cindy Sparks, Kendra Bryant, Don Hart, I saw you on Zoom, and Kim Campbell. Happy birthday. Last verse on 3. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Got some announcements today. There is a collection bucket going around. That's to show appreciation for our annual Christmas gift to the staff that work so hard to take care of us all year long. So we're going to pass this around and go ahead. We've just got a couple of meetings to fill this bucket and make sure everybody who works here has an amazing holiday. Also, speaking of Christmas gifts, Carrie Patterson in the back. Every year we have the Booker T. Washington Christmas program. And to fill Santa's bag, we want to make sure all the kids get the toys that they and everything that they've asked for. And there's a few things that, Carrie, you have that we need some volunteers to go ahead and purchase to make sure that Santa's bag is filled. So please see Carrie to go ahead and make sure those kids' Christmases are amazing. Thank you, Carrie, for doing that. We're also still accepting letters of intent for the local nonprofit partnership for Dancing with the Stars. Next week, doing Rotary differently. Alicia, would you like to come up and share what we're doing to do Rotary differently?
Hey, this is a call to action and I want to see arms raised. We need 10 people to help me go and cook and have lunch with Sunrise Children's Services during our meeting time next week. I only have 2 people, actually 4 people who have volunteered and I need 10 more people. So let me see some hands.
Yep.
I got you. I got you.
11:30 to 1.
11:30 to 1. It's at Cooperoo. It's on our Facebook and I will ask Peggy to send out an email as well. But Ruben helped us during Dancing with the Stars and we need to help Ruben.
Yep.
Please. And there weren't enough hands raised, so think about it.
Sunrise Children's Services is an amazing place for foster children who are in between foster parents to stay, and to go build community with them would be a great experience. So please, if you have time next week, that instead of going to the meeting that we have our third Thursday of service, please consider. All right, also, November 21st, volunteering for the Backpack at God's Pantry at 1 p.m. That's off Winchester. And then we have our social event on the 21st, and that's at the Lexington Philharmonic. It's the rehearsal, Give Birth to the Dream. John Wharton, you're heavily involved in that and sponsored this event. It starts, we have a reception, private reception space for everybody at 6:15, and the performance begins at 7:30, $30 to attend. Love to see you all there. We're looking forward to it. And then our annual holiday party, December 12th, for members and guests at the Campbell House, 6 p.m. Susan talked in detail about what to expect. It's going to be a great time, so hope to see you there. Tickets are $60 and available now on the website. No meeting next week, and the following week, we'll be back on the 5th with Lori Flees, the CEO of Valvoline. Great job, Lori. And introducing our newest Rotarian, Jamie Schrader. Are you here? Jamie Schrader, come on up. The favorite part of the announcements is introducing new Rotarians. So here with the absolute newest Rotarian in the Rotary Club of Lexington, Jamie Schrader will announce.
Thank you, Brett. We are in the middle of a membership drive. I'll give you a one-word strategy to add new members to Rotary. Ask people. Ask.
One word.
One word, ask. Ask them to attend a Rotary meeting. Ask them to attend a social function. We have one coming up. Ask them to get involved, and then ask them to join Rotary. It's not that hard. So we have two today. Very excited to introduce Joe Evans to the Rotary Club. This was kind of an easy person to recruit because he was the president of Rotaract, Rotary in Action. And his father is Carson Evans. But so everybody knows Carson. So Joe kind of grew up in Rotary. And he's been involved with Dancing with the Stars previously. He's been involved in several of our activities when he was in Rotaract. He works with Cambridge Insurance and lives downtown. So he's a downtowner. He's got a lot of interesting hobbies. He enjoys hiking, drones, and ran cross country. And I've seen him out there running a few times too, I believe, on the streets. But he was at DePaul University with a W in Indiana. He's going to be a great member of our organization. I'm very excited to introduce Joe Evans to Rotary.
Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations, Joe Evans. And here to announce our very newest member, Dylan Harper.
Afternoon. It brings me great excitement to introduce Jaron Johns to Rotary. So I encountered Jaron several times in the networking scene in and around Lexington. I've always known him to be the guy with very cool business cards. So if you are lucky to get one of his cards, he's got a unique photo on each of them to show his range of photography, range of styles, range of subjects. So Jaron reached out to Peggy and I following one of our morning mixers. So he was interested in membership, and we talked with him a couple months ago. And it was in that conversation that, okay, too loud. It was in that conversation that we really learned that he's going to be a perfect fit for Rotary. So Jaron is, a well-traveled guy, and we'll talk about that. He's a talented photographer, and that skill is always in need. He's got a heart for teaching and a passion for serving others. So Jaron is a proud Kentuckian. He was born and raised in Nicholasville, Kentucky, but he's traveled the world to great extents. So he has been in, is it 26 different countries? Yeah, 26 different countries, and he lived in Albania for 4 years before returning home. So, like I said, he's world traveled, and if you want to have a conversation about where he's been, I definitely recommend. Jaron is also a very big family guy. So he's father to 3 young daughters. Genevieve, who's 5, Penelope is 2, and Lenora, who's 11 months. And it really shone through in his conversation. One of the biggest questions that he asked was, can I bring my daughters around? Is there an opportunity to bring them to a Rotary function? Because he wants to really instill in his daughters that service and that passion for service. So again, I think it's cool to see his spirit of teaching and his desire to pour into his daughters at such a young age. And he's also got a wife, Anna. Jaron, like many things, he's also highly educated. He's got degrees at Campbellsville University, University of Kentucky, and Eastern Kentucky University. And he uses that knowledge to be a fantastic photographer. So he owns De Grazia Photo, which is a commercial photography and videography company that works with businesses and organizations. So less of portraits, but more of that commercial photography and videography. And he's one of those cool people who applies his skills to his service. As I mentioned, Jaron lived in Albania for 4 years, serving Christian missionaries as a photographer and a teacher. And he's also participated as a photographer in Help Portrait, which is an initiative that helps people get family portraits as well as professional headshots. And so I think that aligns very well with one of our areas of focus, which is growing local economies, because he's helping people get into the workforce by getting those professional headshots. Jaron has also been a photographer for, and it still is, for the Global Sports Mentor Program. And that's an organization that helps empower women, girls, and disabled individuals through sports photography. I asked Jaron what his hobbies were in his spare time, and he said, well, I've got 3 young daughters, and the youngest is 11 months, so I don't get much free time. But when he's able to eke some out, he enjoys hiking, traveling, playing sports, and of course, photography. So please join me in welcoming Jaron Johns to our club.
Well done, Dylan. Welcome. And outside of introducing new members, the second thing that makes me most excited being up at the podium is being right on time. And we are right on time to introduce the introducer of our speaker. So I'd like to welcome our honorary Rotarian. And anybody need the pass the yep, over here, Chief Weathers, please.
Thank you all, and I'm gonna try to keep you on time. You know, they called me or asked me if I wanted to introduce David and Wendy. And I said, wow, my day's pretty full that day, but yes, I will. And I'm, you know, he has his meet the speaker thing right here, but he left out some stuff. Dave and I started working together about the same time, and we really started working together. And I was part of the narcotics unit, and he was part of the intelligence unit. And what that means is we did undercover work. Dave did undercover work, and he was good at it. Even then, we knew there was something special about him. He was and is still a tenacious investigator. Although, you know, you look at Dave and you go, well, there's a man of integrity. There's a man of trust. There's a man of respect. But what you don't see is his soft side. Dave is one of the best friends you could ever have. Dave is one of the best public servants you could ever have. And to top it all off, he married somebody that is not equal, just a little bit above. I can't think of a time when he wasn't asked by somebody to do something that he didn't do it. When he was a homicide investigator, families loved him. He treated each one of his cases and each one of the families associated with the victims as if They were his personal charge. You don't find that very often. And when he retired in 2020, we cried. Not just because of the bow tie, that we wouldn't get to see that anymore. But we knew what we were losing. Little did we know that he wasn't going far, that he wasn't leaving the realm of investigations. This city, in my opinion, truly does not know what treasure it has. David, in front of everybody, I'm here to tell you, I love you. Wendy, we love you. Thank you for all the things you continue to do for the Lexington Police Department. Thank you for opening up your podcast so we can continue to keep families who have lost loved ones in touch and let them know that we still care. My introduction for Dave is, Dave, thank you, and may you always continue to care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I share a memory? In June 1999, I was a homicide detective with the Lexington Police Department. And there's a lot of memories from that time period, but I have to take you back to one and see if I can put you in the car with me on this morning. On a Sunday morning in June, a typical hot day in Lexington, Kentucky, I was at headquarters on a Sunday. See, the thing about that business, when people think homicide detectives is a flashy, glamorous thing that we get from TV and movies, it's really not. And the reason I was at work on an early Sunday morning is I've been called out in the wee hours of the morning over another murder in our town. I remember being at headquarters, working through the morning, working that case. And at one point I had to jump in my little burgundy Crown Victoria car, which was ugly, but it had nice window tints. That's the one thing I liked about it. I got in my car and left headquarters to come to a residence, maybe just a handful of blocks from where we're sitting today. It was pretty solemn. I had to collect myself the entire time I was going because I was going to go to an address and take news that nobody ever wanted to hear. I was going to go to an address and knock on a door of somebody I'd never met and tell them that thing that you and I never want to know, right? So I jump in the car, I'm collecting myself. I go and I pull up just off of 7th Street to a little house that's well kept, a little brittle sidewalk. And I walk up that sidewalk and I go to the door and I knock on that porch. Within a few seconds, a woman met me at the door and she opened the inside door and spoke to me through the screen door. The intrepidation on her face was real. The intrepidation with me was real. Here I am, a little guy in his coat and a tie on a Sunday morning. That doesn't mean or bode well good news for anybody because I wasn't handing around lottery winnings or anything. I told her who I was through the door, which she almost went flush because I'm David Lyons. I'm with the homicide unit. I asked, can I step in and speak to you for a minute? And she slowly opened that door and invited me in. We stood in that room and I asked her, would you like to sit down? And she said, no, I'll stand, thank you. And immediately she said, why are you here? And I told her that just a few hours before, I arrested her adult son for murder, for killing a man just a few blocks away at about 3 a.m. Her lip began to quiver. Her eyes watered. And she began to cry. And she said, you know, I've tried all of my life to help him to become somebody different, to become somebody better. And in that moment, there was this resolution with her and maybe a peace. See, her son had gotten out of prison on a Tuesday night and shot a man to death on Saturday. My name is David Lyons, and thank you for having me. And we're going to talk a little bit about why I told you that story. I think when I told you that, probably 9/10 of you in this room thought I was about to give a death notification. Would you agree? I told you that story because the topic today is the truth about this enigma, this genre called true crime. Because while we call it true crime, there's a lot of truths that still have to come out. And one of those is that very human element that we share when we do these investigations. So thank you for having me. Thanks to the leadership. Lawrence, you got me off my feet. I can't hardly talk. Thank you. I'll write a check. Those were very nice things to say. Most of them probably not true. But thank you for having me. How did I get here? And why am I going to speak to you just for a few minutes on this topic that means a lot to me and my wife, Wendy, who's over here too? That assignment as a homicide detective was the best thing I could have asked for and never asked for in my career in 28 years of policing. I tell people all the time that at home I have a shadow box on the wall with a significant collection of badges. I rose through the ranks in my career, but the one that means the most is the one that simply says detective. And it's a single badge because we didn't get them for uniforms and hats. It's one piece of tin. And it's that time that I spent working with these beautiful people in a fantastic police department. When I retired, that did stick with me, this passion for that, even though I went on and quit being the murder police, as we call ourselves, and went up in the rank, that stuck with me. And so where I'm going to come to you from today on this topic of true crime is, as Judy Collins said, I've seen both sides now. I'm going to speak from the idea that I did the work, and I'm going to speak to what the genre is, because me and my wife are invested for the last 3 years in that genre as content providers. So I think I can speak to some authority on it. I'm going to talk about where it comes from, who's there, and maybe challenge some questions in the end about its validity and whether it does well or does not. Well, here we go. In retirement, along with my wife telling me, you better go find a job and get out of the house. I think that took about 14 days. She's agreeing. Is I remember getting in conversations with a couple people in town, one being Ray, the DA Larson, which we all know and love, and rest in peace. And the topic came up about starting a podcast and in the criminal element in the true crime world. And Ray was like a dad to me, by the way. So anything Ray said, I took seriously. I remember we were talking about different concepts, how we would do it and things like that. But one thing stayed solid. It would revolve around victim advocacy, because that's who Ray, the DA, was. And again, that's what I believed in this whole thing of these investigations. I'm mowing. We have a small farm out in Nicholasville. You mow a lot, and I think a lot, right? And I'm mowing one day, and I started to come up with this concept, and it hit me one day that I could call it the Murder Police Podcast, because it's unique. And in the homicide business, we call ourselves murder cops or murder police. So I've got that. I knew I was going to be in the victim advocacy range in that. And it dawned on me one day when I was mowing, because that's where all my ideas have come from, is as far as the format, I have a true crime fanatic in my home named Wendy, my wife. What I'm talking about there is somebody that is all that's on TV. And I thought, that is my avatar. That is the person we're going to talk to. We're going to ask if she will come and interview with people. And fortunately, she did. Let me ask this. How many people in this room have a mild or a great interest in true crime? Just raise your hand. Let me ask you this. If you don't, or you're related, do you know somebody that probably needs therapy because they have an interest in true crime? There we go. So what I'm getting at is that I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I started listening for the first time in my life to podcasts. A friend of mine, Scott Harvey, just published a great book called Silence Kills, had one. And then I started listening to the true crime world, and I found this range of really thoughtful, well-told research stories about true crime. And then I found this other range of unrealistic, ridiculous, exploitive things in true crime that actually, as somebody that was a victim's advocate, it bothered me a lot. And I thought, we can go there. And we can bring a show that's authentic, that educates the public, that lifts up the name of a victim. One of the things I found is that we've covered a lot of older cases from here in Lexington. And the sad thing is, if I Googled some of these people's names, I might find an appellate record of the person that killed them, but nothing about who they were. We offer that now. We launch these people, memorialize them into the world of the internet forever, so that if people are looking for these people they went to high school with, they find it. So here we go. We conceptualize it and we start recording. I start recording cases from here in Lexington because it was easy. It was a shooting fish in a barrel to get the detectives to come. The first one was on Tommy Lynn Sells. He was a serial killer that killed a 13-year-old girl up off of Elizabeth Street back in the 90s. He has since been dealt with in Texas, if you know what that means. So we didn't have to try him here. What I was proud to do is in the first few episodes is I had Ray the DA on those and got to memorialize Ray forever on the internet. Here we go. So what is this thing called true crime? I thought about how to deliver this to you in a way that might keep it interesting. So I thought, what if I talked about it like in the thing we do in investigations that we all learned in school is who, what, where, when, how, and why. So let's break it down a little bit for you all that aren't aware. Who is important to me in this? Because as somebody that's a content provider, I have to know who the stakeholders are. And I've come to the opinion that there's primarily 4 groups of people that are involved in this, stakeholders. One is us. I'd call us content providers, but the people that are the focus of this thing are anybody in the criminal justice system, not just the police, the scientists, the lawyers, both sides. John Larson, the defense side. John, are you still in here? Yeah, John said hi. I'll tell you, we almost went to jail for contempt in federal court one day. Am I right or wrong? Over David's wisdom teeth, if you remember that. That's a whole nother story. But what I'm getting at is that everybody, forensic scientists, the medical pathologist, anybody, that is the people that embody on that. And I mentioned and I laughed about that because one of the things inside the world that we think in the criminal investigation system and justice system is they think that we are like this with defense attorneys. We're great friends. We know the role when we go in a courtroom and John has put me through my loops like he should as a good defense attorney. And I'm proud to call him a friend. That's why we can tell jokes. So it's going to be the people that actually do the work. Now, the next group of people are what we might call fans, for lack of a better word, the people that are interested. And in a minute, I'll talk about the varying degrees of why they're interested in this thing, this work that I did and so many other people did and whatnot. Another group is the content creator. That's the third one. That's the people that are in this genre. They create it either in a podcast, in a blog, a YouTube channel, they stream it. It is all over the place. It's hard to find a network that doesn't have something to do with true crime. I have to share this because we just saw this, but last year we spent 7 hours with the Weather Channel. Now, this took me off guard a little bit. The Weather Channel has a true crime thing called Storms of Suspicion. It just aired with me and Wendy, but think about how that is. The Weather Channel is reaching into this genre. Last, but the most significant stakeholder that kind of gets forgotten in this is the victims and the surviving victims of violent crime. And you'll know what when I get done why they're a stakeholder in this. We can't leave them out of that 4 groups of people. So we've got who, what is true crime? True crime is this thing where the way I define it now is when we move from a casual interest in the news, and then all of a sudden we lean in at some degree and go, I want to know more about that. And then we go from, I want to know more about that to we become fascinated with maybe the nomenclature of how the investigation puts together. The big one is the why. We'll get to why in a minute. Like, how do people do awful things to other human beings, right? So true crime is when we leave that casual relationship into being curious about it. And by the time we're done, some people in true crime go to a point of what we call going live, and they actually investigate or participate in investigation cases. Could anything go wrong with that? We'll see, maybe. Could anything go wrong with that? For somebody that took it pretty seriously and held myself to a standard, we'll talk about that in a minute. So we got who and what. Who, what, when. How long has this been around? I think from time immemorial. I'm finishing up publishing a book, and I did a lot of research and everything to look at the breadth of this thing. And can I share and believe that I think Cain and Abel, as early as Cain and Abel, because think about it for a minute. The first recorded act of a violent act on a human being, right? Of brothers. Oh, wow. Here now, this is a true crime show in the making right here, right? And so you got Cain and Abel. And we know that when that happened, that story was shared and is shared today. It started probably maybe through pantomime, maybe through language. Then it was written and it was recorded. And I know that it might be the first one because to this day, we still grapple with the first murder of a man against his brother, and that is where it's at. So time immemorial, maybe it's been around that because we stay interested. Then it moves through. If you get into the 18th and 19th century, you had small publications about detectives and their work. People were fascinated with that, going into vaudeville, early radio, all of these things. And then, of course, movie, television, and TV, where all the truth is. Am I right or wrong, right? Because you know we can get DNA in 8 minutes with a commercial break if we get that. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. So who, what, when is, to me, is this has been around for a long time. And can I share? If you look at the industry, it doesn't show any signs of slowing. So then that begs to differ what we're discussed, though, what we're doing too. So we got who, what, when, and how. How did this get to where it's at today? How did it get started? And I'm still going to puzzle with that one for a while. I'm going to leave you with that a little bit. I know that the how comes to that fascination, maybe again with how do these investigations work? We handle that. We really give people the authentic way of looking at what these do. But again, how does another human being treat someone else the way these people do that we see these cases on? And how does it grow? Word of mouth, advertising, things like that. The how is really important in true crime. But it comes down to how do people do that to one another. We've got who, what, when, how, why. Here we go. When you get into true crime, and this is where I took a really interest in this, as somebody used to do it, is we talked a little bit about why people get interested in true crime. And I think those are good reasons. Again, the range is slight curiosity all the way to working it. But I have to add too, there are people that get interested in this that we don't speak to in our show. They're pretty exploitive of these pretty bad moments. You see where I'm going? Maybe gory, maybe a macabre interest in it, maybe a fascination. I've been told that there are women that have Ted Bundy's dental impressions from his case tattooed on their bodies. Now, we don't talk to those people. They're not going to tune in to me and Wendy. We don't give them that. But it's like in that wide range of that why. There are some podcasters out there, again, that we don't have their audience probably, that are really quick to show pictures of decedents on YouTube or their pages. And it's like, why? What value does that add to this whole thing? That won't happen on our show. But the why is pretty important, again, back to that. Why do people get into it and become content creators again? Do they do it to share the compassion and the love for these people we lost in the community? That's us. Is we do that to give people a voice. I was sharing with the chief that we maybe do some work with him in the future, is we started doing some unsolveds and missings last year. And I think maybe we'll move a case. We'd like to think we move a case. But the most powerful thing I found is we take somebody who lost a loved one or is missing a loved one, and we give them an international platform to say, he or she is important in my life. He or she is not a statistic. And they cry, don't forget about who this person is. Bring me some kind of justice or a way to metabolize this loss in my life. And that's what I told Lawrence, or Chief Weathers, I call him Lawrence. What I told him is I said, you will find that it'll mend bridges between investigators and victims' families because tensions get really high. But we give a place to where people can say he or she was loved and they had meaning. We're just now wrapping up at around 8 episodes on a young man that's missing from Nicholasville, Kentucky. He got out of prison after doing 7 or 8 years, went to visit some friends, and he's never been seen again. Right? And the sad thing is you could look at it and say, we just did 8 years in the can. Well, somebody robbed him of the ability to not do 8 years in the can again and cut his life short. And if you listen to those episodes, you'll hear the raw emotion of his father and his mother and his uncles and his family about what that's like to not have answers. And it's a case too, which by the way, the answer is within a grip of a few people at that house where he's at, but they're not talking. That's why we do it. That's why we hope other podcasters do it. As far as the people that go live, I want to talk about this for a minute from somebody did it. A big fascination I found one on this is when people get involved in investigations, again, is it good or is it bad? And I'm going to say yes. Yes. And because I can tell you this, and I did a lot of research and I interviewed people from all over the country that participated in cases and moved them forward. The reality of it is in a police department, if I said this when Chief Weathers was in the room, he'd yell hallelujah and stand up. Don't have enough people. And it's time economics. It's the idea that you can only do so much with so little. When I was doing death investigations, there were 4 of us that all did death investigations in Fayette County, and rapes and sexual assaults and missing persons. Do you get where I'm going? So what happens? You have a lot more work. It's like raking leaves on a windy day. What people have in the community in the true crime world that are well-intended and want to help is time. They have that thing that we don't have. Now, you take that time, and if they're well-intended, this is the thing, if they check their ego at the door, if they don't want to make their next 15 minutes of time, what a beautiful thing to have. I am envious of the time that they have. The next thing the good ones have is conceptual imagination and critical thinking skills, right? I hate to say it, but I've seen some detectives on TV that have neither of those, right? And when Wendy watches those shows, I'll walk to the room and I'll say, he or she's full of SHIT. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, I wouldn't work with that guy or girl for anything because they're all ego. So take somebody well-intended with time and give them critical thinking and conceptual imagination skills. And it's crazy what they can do if they stay inside the lane of what the justice system asks us to do. For example, I interviewed a woman in Canada. I reached out and asked for anecdotal evidence where she successfully assisted the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in identifying a dead man, a John Doe, based on some CCTV footage that she found from another area in Canada. And she simply sent it to the police and said, you know, the guy on this footage is wearing the same clothing as your John Doe is, and the timing's about right. And then she waited. She didn't go out and blast it all over YouTube that I just did this best thing. See where I'm going with that? She waited. And she said in 3 months, a sergeant from that organization called and said, guess what? That's it. And she said the most powerful thing was that is he actually spent time on the phone talking to her. There we go. That's where it works. How many people have been following the news on the horrible murders in Delphi? They just convicted the guy, right? I don't know if you're aware of it, but during that investigation, the crime scene photos were leaked. Were you all aware of that? You may not be aware of it because of what happened. And I've interviewed the podcasters, a couple of podcasters. They have one called, I think it's called The Murder Book. And they get a plain envelope in a mail one day, no address, no return address. And they open it. And it's the scenes from where those 2 young ladies were brutally murdered. The people that are close to that will tell you that scene is horrific. Somehow those photos landed in an envelope to these 2 kids that have a podcast. What'd they do? They shoved them back in the envelope and called the police, and that was it. Now, I shudder to think how much some of these big publications would have paid these kids for those envelopes. But there's that ethical thing again to where they, like us, are trying to do the right thing in this world. On the other side, you've got people that go a little too live. They knock on suspects' doors, which I think is crazy stupid because some of these people, if they have hurt somebody else, probably won't think a lot about hurting another person. Just, I'm not a detective anymore, but I still remember that clue, as we might say. But they'll do that, or they'll make a podcast or they'll make a show. And let's say we work with a lot of families where the known suspect is probably known. And I'm going to tell you, it's probably who did this harm, but we never talk about that because the case is still open. And so it's not a matter of secrecy. It's a matter of that if that person is ever charged, rule 1, they have got to have a fair trial. Can we agree with that? And this whole system is based on that person the minute I or anybody charges them. And we don't want to dilute that pool and jam that up. That's the thing that makes America different than other places. The other thing, though, is that if you run around saying their name, they have a response. They go lower. They go underground. They get smarter. Does that make sense? They get smarter, and maybe after 7 years, they're reminded, oh, well, zip, don't talk about it. Because as an investigator, we're hoping that they're stupid. I've always said that as a homicide investigator, I don't think we're that smart. I've always said that we wait for that bulb over their head to blink and we jump on them in the dark. And I need them to be dumb. I need them to be believing that nobody's coming to find it. Good, perfect time. I got the time alert and I'm right there. I was sweating that. So it's so there we go. Is hopefully I've kind of given you an overview of what the truth about true crime is, and the need for more truth to be in it. It's a fantastic genre. If you listen, if you've got friends to listen, I've left pins and some stickers and some cards. Give us a listen. We are on every platform. There's not one we're not on. We have a full multicam experience on YouTube, so you can come and watch Wendy do her best. I mean, she's fantastic with these people when we interview. And again, we've done a couple of network shows, and there's a few more in the packs. We found that they do that, but give us a listen. 5 stars and a written review in Apple, and we like that. I might give you coffee mugs for that action, just to be up. Now that we've talked about ethics and that's behind us. When I teach for FBI Lead, I always tell my audience that I'll give you a mug for 5 stars and a review if you like it. And I'll give you a mug and 5 stars if you don't like it. You just give me a mug. I want those reviews. So give us a listen, give us a thought. If you have cases in your family or close to you that have no resolution or that speak to you, reach out to me and Wendy, and we'll help you produce those. We'll bring those people to life, because I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but it's unfortunate in our society that pretty much everybody in this room has probably lost somebody the wrong way. So thank you again. Hopefully, if you've got questions, we can clear it up, but thank you all.
Anybody have a question? One question?
I'm good at making
Can it be available afterwards to talk?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Once again for David, it's amazing that raking leaves when the wind's blowing really hit home over this weekend. Thanks again for doing that. 2 brief announcements. One, we have 2 committee meetings immediately following closing announcements, and that's the scholarship meeting and Dancing with the Lexington Stars are going to have brief meetings today. Also, don't forget next week we have an opportunity to live service above self with Carrie Patterson and donating to the Booker T. Washington program, the Sunrise Children's Center, and God's Pantry, and have a little social event at the Philharmonic. We are adjourned.